Hi, it's Leslie Seeley. I'm in the SPED 5003 class, and this is my week one introduction video for the reflection questions. This week you had us take a look at 5 different videos, if I'm correct. Yes. And let's start with number 1. It was a video over the CDC Learn the Science resource, and you asked if we have one of those in our local school where I will be teaching, and I have taught on and off over the years in that school district. And I can assure you there is no resource area, especially in the high school area where I was. As this has to do with developmental milestones, there might have been something available in the pre-K. I actually did about 6 months in a pre-K classroom, but I wasn't an administrator, so don't remember having these resources. When I have my own classroom in the fall, you can be sure I will utilize this. Your last question on the subject is it available in multiple languages? I watched the video twice, and I did catch that there were pamphlets and other material available, but I did not hear them address multiple language, so I Googled it, and yes, it is available in multiple languages. And yes, I will be promoting this in my own classroom and even discuss with the administration after I've got my feet in the water a little bit and see about bringing this to our local school. The second video was one I was very interested in, as I, at one time or another, was a pre-law student. I have been familiar with a lot of the education cases, and this one actually happened prior to when I took those classes. And I remember we did a little short thing on all the different important education rulings. And this one, I believe, was Justice Roberts. It said in the video, I took a little bit of time to read through the actual thing after I watched the video. And I think the most important thing, not only according to the video, but according to my research, was this brought guidance in and required schools to measure progress. And in order to measure progress, that means these special ed students have to be making progress. Prior to this ruling, it was kind of the old theme that happened in a lot of special education classrooms across America. Kids with intellectual disabilities were thrown into a classroom, and it was more like a daycare setting. Not saying that there weren't great teachers all over, but there were a lot of times these kids weren't advancing in their education. It was more about behavioral control and management. And so this decision set the guidelines from the highest level, and then it's trickled down to the local school districts, that these kids have to have educational goals set as to where you expect them to be and what their abilities and performance levels can be, and then you have to have a way to measure their progress. In the past, a lot of special education kids did not have to perform. They did not take any kind of curriculum-based measurements or standardized testing. And I think this ruling really affected the way special education has evolved since 1994, and I'm really happy about that. The third video was over English language learners, or ELA or ESL, whatever the different terminologies are for wherever your school is. Depending on the state, it's different. I had a lot of questions in watching that video because I'll be honest, I have very little familiarity. I'm from a very rural, non-diverse school district, and it's not something we see here. Phoned up my aunt who has a master's, and she did part of her courses and then ended up teaching what they call ELS and ELA in California. And the one I got stuck on was actually the last point in the video, that text sets should be on themes that are culturally familiar. Kind of thought I knew what that meant. Phoned her up. She's like, wow, I've been out of it for a while. I'm not sure. So she phoned up a friend. We got on a group call, and this lady teaches English as a second language to adults, but she also was a certified school teacher for 30 years in primary education. And she was telling me that means you bring themes that all of these kids can relate to. So let's say I'm teaching on a holiday, like let's say New Year's. It's something we celebrate in our country. It's so important that you have material that what you're teaching on Chinese New Year, I can also bring in commonality themes, discuss what they do in their culture, what are their traditions. She gave me an example of at a birthday party in Mexico. Kids often use piñatas. It's something we also do in America. So I would want to find materials that those kids are familiar with, very similar to how we don't do the standardized testing anymore with bias or discrimination on like an American theme that a Spanish speaker or a Russian child may have no familiarity to. The main takeaways of that video were proficiency level is the most important. You want to keep a third grader in third grade and adjust the materials to their proficiency level. And that's extremely important as they age. She mentioned them having to climb to catch up, and you don't want a sixth grader in, or a child that should be in sixth grade in a fourth grade setting. They're never going to catch up, and they're not going to be with their peers, and that whole setup is bad. She also said consider literacy in their native language. I think that's extremely important. I'm not sure that this will ever come up where I am right now, but perhaps it's just something good to be familiar with. And I think we could draw on it even within the subcultures of our area, in ways of kids of different socioeconomic classes or different family type backgrounds. What are the traditions in your home versus what another kid does in their home, and what are the similarities and differences, and it involves everybody that way. The next video was the parents' perspective. It was a very moving video. I have tried to look at my own experiences in having children. None of my kids were severely disabled in any way. They had dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, and I now have a grandson that is low on the autism spectrum, who I homeschooled this last year because he was having difficulty in our local school district, and I am trying to put my own perspective in for my experience. And the video really didn't change my insight. It brought up a lot of old feelings I had about even just having daughters with dyslexia, the different fears I had. I kind of became a mama bear, an advocate, and was always sure, because I came from a family of educators, to promote their learning and to give them confidence and instill that they had abilities and not let their disabilities define them. But I could see how that could be different if you had a child with more severe disabilities. I would like to think that as a parent who has kind of gone through similar situations as maybe some of my students' parents would, that I can be respectful of the different phases they will go through. And even with my grandson, my own son and the child's mother, very reluctant. It's taken me 3 years to get them to agree to testing. And I felt like a lot of that was stigma. My own son said, there's nothing wrong with him. He's just acting out. So I can relate to those parents, and I just think it's important as teachers we're aware of the different things that these parents are going through. In the last video, it asks about different programs that were featured where adults or the kids maybe in a transition stage of vocational training that have more severe disabilities are finding work in adulthood. And we do have a program like that in Boone County here in Arkansas. And I have always felt it's a great program. I know a lot of the adult people that are in that program. There are some that greet at Walmart. There's some baggers at the local grocery stores in Harrison. And I've been a business owner for 30 years. We own a rock quarry and excavation business, and I knew some of the instructors at the Boone County Adult Day Center and Training Program, and they approached me and said, is there a place for any of our learners in your quarry? Even as open-minded as I was very reluctant to take on an employee with disabilities. A young man with cerebral palsy is who they wanted me to take, and we ended up doing an internship with him for 2 months, I believe he was on with us, and that ended up being a very positive experience. You have to excuse my phone. We've got storm warnings out tonight. Anyway, so I'm very happy about these programs, and I personally used a student and trainee, and I hope he went on and had a good experience. He was great with the paperwork and scaling trucks out. His physical limitations, he wanted to operate equipment, and unfortunately, his reaction times weren't quick enough that we felt he was safe or our other employees were safe with him in, a big excavator or on a backhoe even, or in a dump truck. But we did find ways for him to learn the trade and work in the scale house and use the computers. He was an exceptional young man, and I was proud to have been part of that program. So that will wrap up my first video. I was a little nervous and sorry, but I will get better at this as we go. Thank you.